my name is Sydney Studi. I work in service engineering for the AWS Customer Incident Response Team, and we have an exciting Women in Cybersecurity episode for today. Today, I am joined by Anya. Anya, thanks for being here.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Sydney. And my name is Anya Durbakova, and I'm a Senior Startup Solutions Architect here at AWS, focusing on healthcare and life science companies. I work with early-stage greenfield startups that are in the healthcare and life science space at this time. I've been here for about a year and a half at AWS. I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. And prior to my time at AWS, I've been in the field for 11 years. I've been a developer for about 7 years or more, and that was at various companies. And after that, I made a jump over to startups as a founding CTO of a retail analytics company. Subsequently, I went to other healthcare startups and really resonated with their cause. So this is what made me really interested to join this team and continue working with healthcare and life science startups here at AWS. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're really excited to have you and glad to hear your perspective on things. You said you mentioned you work in startups. That's a lot about what we're going to talk about today. But what do you enjoy about working in the healthcare security space?
Yeah, sure. So the healthcare cause just generally resonates with me. Like I said, I come from a healthcare startup background and really enjoyed tackling the problems that they have here, such as security, integration, and so forth. And what specifically interests me working about at the intersection of the healthcare and security space is I often work with either domain experts who are experts in life sciences or genomics or healthcare, but they may lack enough knowledge in the cloud or technology in general to get their startup to the place where it needs to be, or the other way around. Or I work with really technical individuals who are really tech savvy and cloud oriented, but they may not have enough knowledge in the domain space to understand what requirements the healthcare space may have, what regulation they have to adhere to, and how to configure their environment specifically for that vertical. So that makes me really interested to work at that intersection so I can kind of bridge that gap between the domain experts and the technical experts. Yeah.
Very nice. I hope to hear more about that in this episode. We should just jump in. So building a startup, I'm sure, can be very overwhelming. Where do you even start?
Yeah, so a startup is an overwhelming process, right? You have to wear many different hats, anything from development to testing your code and setting up your infrastructure to recruiting. And oftentimes what happens in terms of security at startups is because they're so overwhelmed with so many other things and pulled into many different directions. And just due to a lack of time and resources, security kind of becomes a back burner issue for them, and that often gets tackled much later, which is not really a best practice way to go about it because it is so important. We want to enable our startups to really bring security to the forefront of what they do and kind of get started with it right away. So one thing that we always dictate and kind of showcase to our startup customers is something that was developed internally at AWS. It's called the Startup Security Baseline. And it is essentially a prescriptive guidance that we have developed for our startups to help them get started easily on AWS in the security space. So a lot of our startups might say things like, well, there's so many documents out there and so many white papers, they just get overwhelmed and there's just so much information and a plethora of documentation. And that was kind of the motivation for the Startup Security Baseline, to help them weed through a lot of the information that they see to avoid and kind of reduce that overwhelm, and to help them get started more easily. So do you want to maybe take a look a little bit at what I'm talking about to give people a better idea of what the Startup Security Baseline is?
I would love to. Yes. Do you have maybe a screen that you can share and show it?
Yes, that'd be great. So I do have a screen, so maybe you can bring that up. There we go. So this is what I'm talking about. So the Startup Security Baseline, like I said, it's essentially a document. It is a prescriptive guidance document. And what it talks about is how to secure your account. And the account is essentially where you're running your workloads on AWS, where you log into your console, etc. And your workloads are your applications that are running in your account. The idea of this document is it creates these bite-sized sections for you to where you can go in and learn about the different pieces of securing your account and securing your workload step by step. So for example, if you want to set account level contacts to be able to be easily contacted by AWS in the event of, let's say, a credit card expiration for a billing event, or like if you're having a security incident or anything like that, you can go into these sections. And as I was saying, the idea is to make them really bite-sized so people can learn about them step by step without being overwhelmed. And they can go through and read about how to do this. Like it will explain to you about each recommendation's importance, what is it for, and then give you actionable steps about how to actually do it within your account. So you can follow the step-by-step guidance for each of those, like setting your account level contacts or restricting the use of the root user, etc. And then when you want to learn more, given the time, you can click on each one of these recommendations and actually it'll take you to the documentation where you can dive even deeper on that. So essentially the idea is to break it down for you to be able to consume it easily and kind of take your startup from the very beginning to a good step with your security posture. And again, with your securing your workload section, it's very similar. It's broken up into different sections. So you can go step by step and understand how to set up permissions and policies and securely access things like keys and secrets. I will say that this is not an exhaustive list of recommendations, right? There are definitely future steps that you can do to grow your security strategy at your company, but it's a really great place to start, which is why we typically direct a lot of our startup customers to this particular document to get started. Any specific questions that you have, or maybe you want me to dive deeper into any of this?
Yeah, well, I really like how it's just like, well, you described it perfectly, bite size. So if I was a startup and I didn't know where to start, AWS has so many features, services, security, like how do I do all of that? So this is the place that I should go and start reading through each section and then go for I
Absolutely.
like how the links are in the startup security baseline too. So some of them will take me to the console, some of them will take me to more documentation. It's like a very nice high level view. Um, do I have any questions? Well, I do have a question. So okay, startup security baseline. That is awesome. What if like right now I don't have time to read all of it? What could I carry away from my session right now?
That's a great question. There's a couple of things I would tell you to remember from today's session. So one of them, if you don't have time today, right? One thing you can do is you can get a quick snapshot of your account, so to speak, to understand where you do stand from the security standpoint. So there's a service for that, for immediate and quick actionable guidance for you. If you didn't know about this service, I'd like to talk about it. It's called Trusted Advisor. And just to showcase to our listeners what this service is, you can go to your AWS console and just in the search bar, you can type in Trusted Advisor and you'll end up in this particular view. And what this service does is it scans your account across 5 of the 6 pillars of the well-architected framework, such as cost optimization, performance, security, and so on. And so let's just go to Trusted Advisor and take a look at how it looks. So here on the left-hand side, as you can see, it has the 5 out of the 6 pillars of the well-architected framework. And what it does is essentially scans your environment and it gives you proactive recommendations for anything that it finds or any kind of warnings. You certainly want to see a lot of like green check marks in the Trusted Advisor to tell you that things are looking good in your account. But it will give you actionable guidance and also point you to documentation on how to resolve things if things may not be in the configuration that you want. So let's go ahead and go to our security pillar and see what kind of recommendations it may give you. So as you can see, I do have some green check marks with no problems, which is great. But in this particular example and account, I do have a couple things I could investigate as well. So how this works is you just scroll down and you will be able to see the different things that Trusted Advisor has located on this particular account. For example, it has a flag on some high security issues for well-architected. It's flagging that I don't have an identity and access management password policy, and I don't have MFA or multi-factor authentication on the root account. So let's go ahead and pause here for a second. If this is an issue for you for any of these, right? What you can do is just click on this little triangle here. And what it'll tell you is it'll first explain what this particular check is for. So it'll tell you that this checks at the root account and warns you if MFA is not enabled. So it'll explain the importance of this check. And then also it will tell you what the recommended action is. So you can actually go on to one of these links and set up MFA. So MFA is multi-factor authentication. So if you walk away with just one thing from this episode, this would be it. Is to make sure that you have multi-factor authentication enabled on your root account. That is so, so important. So if you don't remember anything else, please remember to set up MFA in your account, and Trusted Advisor will be able to flag it for you and show you actionable steps on how to resolve this issue. So hopefully people remember.
Yes, that's super important. MFA, MFA, MFA. Take anything from this session. So with Trusted Advisor, what if I've never interacted with it before? Like, is it a free service? Is it something that's already on and checking? Or like what would I need to do to get started?
That's also a great question. So Trusted Advisor is actually a free service. If you didn't know that, that's also a really good thing to carry away. And Trusted Advisor, again, the way you access them, just go to your search bar up here in your console from any page, search for Trusted Advisor, and it'll just pop up. And you'll just click on Trusted Advisor and be able to enter the view where I was at before. And the thing to remember is that depending on which support level you're on in your account, such as basic or developer support or business or enterprise support, it will have different numbers of checks that it does on your environment. So, for example, for basic or developer support, it only has access to a limited number of checks across these areas like security. But if you're on higher levels of support, it opens up much wider array of checks that it does, and you can also automate it to be able to send you weekly emails with things that it finds. But if you're on basic support, once you go in, you will also be able to click this button, say refresh all checks, and it'll rerun for you when you do that. But again, even on the basic and developer support level, it's still very valuable. So if you've never checked it out before, definitely do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Will do. That's awesome that you can just go and look and get answers and recommendations immediately just by typing in Trusted Advisor. Neat. Thank you for sharing that. So I heard a rumor that there's an event happening about startups and security. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. I'd love to tell you more about that. So, that is a really, really good thing for people to attend. In general, any kind of events we do try to tailor them to a specific audience with a specific actionable topic, right? So, one event I'm super excited about is our AWS Startup Security Day that we're going to be hosting on Thursday, June 29th. This is an in person event. I'm one of the people organizing and leading this event. I will be taking place in New York City. So if you are local to New York and you're interested in this event, please do sign up. It's free. It's for you. It's focused on startups specifically. However, if you do take a look at the agenda items that we have, you can take a look at the general description here. But based on the agenda, it will resonate to many types of customers, not just startups. We do want to target startups specifically because they tend to be the ones again, with just so many things going on, they do back burner their startup, their security setups and kind of prioritizing their security posture. But if you're generally interested, based on this agenda, do sign up. Again, it's free, and we would love to tell you more about how to set up your company for success from the beginning and kind of including your growth strategies as well. And the idea of the event is we'll have some basic startup security baseline presentation, which is what we talked about. We will have a hands-on workshop as well, and we will have some security growth strategies discussions as well in this talk. So that is something to remember and put on your calendar if you're local to New York City.
Nice. That's awesome. And it's awesome that it's free. We're talking about all sorts of free things today. We're talking about the security day. We're talking about Trusted Advisor, the startup security baseline. Can we go back to the startup security baseline and maybe just talk about any like key takeaways as we start to wrap up from today's episode?
Totally. Yes. Absolutely. So One of the key takeaways, like I was saying, to secure your account is definitely to put MFA on your root user, and you will see that in one of the sections here, which will teach you how to set up the MFA on your root user account. And in general, the other good recommendation to take away is just to restrict the use of your root user, because you really don't need to use it on a daily basis because it is so powerful. It can really do anything in your account, which is why you need to protect it. That's why it's so important. So restricting the root user access in general and utilizing other types of users for your daily use is the best practice that we would recommend.
That's awesome. And a good call out here is these recommendations are not, they don't just apply to startups. The startup security baseline is an awesome resource for if you're a startup, but restricting use of the root user, requiring MFA, using least privilege permissions, those are just good security practices for any size customer. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely true. Least privilege access is important for any customer, and we do recommend and that's actually something that will be flagged by Trusted Advisor as well. If you don't have any identity and access management users, that implies that you're just using the root user, which is an issue, right? And the root user, again, if something happens to that user and it gets compromised, it essentially your entire account becomes in jeopardy, because if it's compromised, the root user can't do anything, including close your account, which would be very inconvenient. Which is why recommending to limit its use is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only a few use cases that you need the root user for that can be found on the AWS documentation. So, absolutely. So, awesome, Anya. This was really neat. Thank you for sharing the startup security baseline, for sharing Trusted Advisor and how it's free, and
Yeah.
just it's the startup security day, how that's free also. I think this is awesome best practices and recommendations for our customers. Um, so we'll go ahead and wrap up now. Thank
Maybe
you
I can add
for.
one more thing, actually, Sydney.
Oh
One thing
yeah.
I was thinking about is we were talking about the Startup Security Day event and how it is in person, right? Which obviously we love to see our customers in person. Please do come out. But we understand that not everybody can do that, or they're not local to the area. So, one thing that I would also say, if you are interested to learn more about this and you're not local, one other resource that we can share with you today is the Startup Security Baseline Workshop, which is also free and publicly accessible. And it is a hands on workshop that is out there for you to do in your own account whenever you can on your own time. And this workshop essentially aligns with the startup security baseline recommendations. So if you're looking to learn more about it, just search online for startup security baseline workshop, and you will be able to perform it in your account yourself and get hands on exposure that way as well.
That's awesome. So I would have to do to access it is type in security baseline workshop to a search, and then it'll just pop up.
And you'll be able to find it. Yep.
Awesome. That's so neat. Thank you for coming and sharing these resources with everyone. These are very powerful security resources. So we'll go ahead and wrap up now. Don't forget to tune in to watch AWS on air as we cover in on the latest launches and news. And stay tuned for our next session here at the Worldwide Public Sector.